Khadija and Tay's life in Accra looked perfect to everyone who knew them. Their home, tucked in a quiet neighborhood, was always spotless and inviting, filled with laughter and the soft hum of music. Friends often complimented Khadija's warm charm and Tay's calm confidence, and together they seemed like the kind of couple people envied, always smiling, always supporting each other. Social media photos captured the picture-perfect moments. Weekend brunches, evening walks along the coast, and family gatherings that looked straight out of a magazine. But behind the smiles, Tay began noticing little things that didn't quite fit. Khadija, usually so organized, would misplace appointments or forget small tasks. She sometimes seemed lost in thought, her moods shifting from cheerful to quiet without warning. And lately she talked a lot about the baby, more than anyone would expect for someone not yet pregnant, or so he thought. Tay brushed it off at first, convincing himself that maybe he was overthinking. Still, the odd moments kept stacking up. A dinner invite canceled at the last minute, a story that didn't quite match what she had said earlier, a look in her eyes that seemed distant and secretive. He couldn't pinpoint it, but a small knot of unease began to form in his chest. Life was supposed to be perfect, and yet something felt off. And in those quiet, ordinary moments at home, Tay realized that maybe the life he admired from the outside wasn't exactly what it seemed. Tay had just finished a long day at work when Khadija called him into the living room with a wide, mischievous smile. She was holding a small, pink card, her eyes sparkling as she waved it in front of him. "You're going to be a father," she announced, her voice full of drama and excitement. Tay froze for a moment, a mix of joy and confusion washing over him. He wanted to leap up, hug her, and celebrate, but a tiny voice in the back of his mind reminded him of the little oddities he had noticed recently: misplaced appointments, mood swings, and the strange way she always mentioned the baby. Still, the happiness was immediate. He hugged her, feeling a thrill of anticipation and pride. A child would change everything, and for a moment, he let himself imagine their life expanding with a new heartbeat in the house. Khadija's laughter bubbled up, infectious and bright, and Tay found himself smiling genuinely, pushing aside the nagging doubts for just a moment. By the next day, the news had spread like wildfire. Family and friends poured in, bearing gifts, congratulations, and advice. Aunts fussed over Khadija, insisting she rest and eat well, while uncles clapped Tay on the back, whispering encouragements about stepping up and being responsible. The attention was overwhelming, and Tay felt both pride and pressure. Everyone was watching, expecting him to rise to the occasion, to be the perfect partner and father. At dinner, the chatter never stopped. Questions about names, plans for the nursery, and even what kind of father Tay intended to be floated across the table. Khadija beamed, clearly enjoying the spotlight, while Tay nodded and smiled, careful to keep his own doubts hidden. He remembered the inconsistencies, the little lies that didn't add up, but for now, he held them back. For now, he wanted to share in the excitement, to live in the moment, and to imagine that life had truly turned a new, joyous page. Even as the house buzzed with celebration, a quiet tension lingered in Tay's mind. He couldn't shake the feeling that not everything was as simple as it seemed. But surrounded by laughter, clinking glasses, and the warmth of loved ones, he made himself believe in the magic of the moment. After all, wasn't this what a perfect life was supposed to feel like? After the excitement of Khadija's pregnancy announcement, life settled back into its usual rhythm, or so it seemed. At first, Tay tried to push aside the tiny unease that lingered in his mind. He wanted to be a supportive husband, the kind who shared in the joy of impending parenthood. But little things began to gnaw at him, small inconsistencies that made him pause and take a closer look. The doctor visits were the first sign. Khadija would say she had appointments, but sometimes she came back too late or seemed evasive when he asked for details. When he tried to follow up casually, she offered vague explanations. The nurse wanted to check again, or, "It's just a routine thing." Tay didn't press her, not yet. It felt wrong to question her openly, especially with so many family and friends celebrating their. Then came the stories. Khadija would tell a tale about the day's events, only for him to hear a slightly different version later. At first, he dismissed it as simple forgetfulness, but the repetition became too frequent to ignore. She spoke about her pregnancy in a way that seemed rehearsed, almost too perfect, like she was reading from a script. The excitement was there, but it felt polished, staged even, and it made him pause. Tay found himself watching for patterns. He noticed when she mentioned the baby at the dinner table, how she always placed herself at the center of attention, and how she carefully curated every conversation about their future. He compared these moments to the earlier oddities, the misplaced appointments, sudden mood swings, and the unease grew. Still, he stayed quiet. Confrontation felt risky, not because of Khadija, but because of the social circle around them. Everyone loved Khadija, and any accusation would make him look foolish, jealous, or paranoid. Tay didn't want to embarrass himself or his wife in front of family and friends. So he kept his doubts private, observing quietly, storing details in his mind like pieces of a puzzle he didn't yet know how to solve. Each day brought a mix of joy and tension. He smiled at Khadija, laughed with her, and joined in the family celebrations, but inside, a small voice whispered that something wasn't right. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but the knot in his chest tightened with every too-perfect story, every inconsistent appointment, every practiced smile. He loved his wife and wanted to trust her, but the seeds of suspicion had been planted, and they were beginning to grow. It was a quiet evening, and Tay had just returned from work, expecting the usual calm of their home. The soft hum of the ceiling fan and the faint scent of Khadija's cooking filled the air. As he passed the dining table, something caught his eye, a small envelope lying slightly askew, as if it had been dropped in a hurry. He recognized the clinic's logo on the corner. His heart skipped a beat. Khadija hadn't mentioned any recent visits, at least not ones that required paperwork. For a moment, he considered leaving it alone. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it belonged to a neighbor or was some old document misplaced by chance. But the curiosity gnawed at him. He picked it up, feeling the weight of it in his hands, the papers inside promising answers he both feared and wanted. Tay hesitated. Should he open it? Was it an invasion of privacy, a betrayal of trust? Yet something inside told him he needed to know. He unfolded the report carefully, the letters blurring for a moment as his pulse quickened. And then he saw it, an ultrasound, dated months before Khadija had claimed she was pregnant. Time seemed to slow. He reread the date, then the notes, then the image itself. The shock hit him in waves. His mind raced through memories and conversations, connecting dots he had tried to ignore. The excitement, the rehearsed stories, the odd appointments, they weren't mistakes or forgetfulness. They were pieces of a lie carefully woven over months. Tay sat down heavily, the report trembling slightly in his hand. His chest felt tight, a mixture of anger, disbelief, and heartbreak. He thought of Khadija, of the life they had built together, of the trust he had given so freely. It all felt like a facade now, a beautiful mask hiding something he hadn't expected. For the first time, he saw their life differently. The home, the laughter, the social admiration, they were all part of a carefully constructed image. The perfect life he had admired was cracking, and the truth was staring him in the face. He didn't know what to do next. Should he confront her immediately, or gather more proof? Should he confide in someone, or face this alone? The questions swirled, but one thing was clear. The illusion was over. That single piece of paper had changed everything. Tay realized that life as he knew it had shifted in an instant, and nothing would ever feel the same again. Sitting there with the report in his hands, Tay felt a cold clarity. The first crack in the perfect life had appeared, and it was wider than he could have imagined. That evening, Tay sat across from Khadija at the kitchen table, the soft light casting shadows across her face. He held himself steady, his voice calm, careful not to betray the storm swirling inside him. "Hey, I noticed this report on the table today," he said casually, sliding the envelope toward her. "I wasn't sure what it was about." Khadija's eyes flicked to the envelope, and for a moment, her usual confidence wavered. She took a slow breath and smiled nervously, as if trying to turn the situation into a misunderstanding. "Oh, it's nothing really," she said quickly. "Just a mix-up at the clinic. Maybe they sent it by mistake, or it's from an old visit." Tay nodded slowly, keeping his tone light. "I see," he said, though his mind was working faster than ever. He asked a few more questions, casual ones, pretending he didn't already know the truth. "You've had several appointments recently, right?" he asked. "I just want to make sure everything's okay with the pregnancy." Khadija fidgeted with her fingers, avoiding eye contact. "Yes, everything's fine," she replied. Her voice was a little too high, a little too cheerful. "Just routine checks. Nothing important." The tension between them was thick, almost visible. Tay could feel it in the air, a charged silence where every word mattered. He realized that Khadija was covering, carefully picking her words to maintain the story she had built. Her nervous energy was a confirmation of what he had begun to suspect. After a few minutes, Tay leaned back, keeping his composure. He didn't want to explode or accuse her outright, not yet. That would give her the chance to defend herself, to spin the story further. Instead, he decided he needed more proof, something undeniable. He thought about contacting the clinic discreetly, checking dates and records, and confiding in someone he could trust without alerting Khadija. As he watched her retreat to the living room, pretending to busy herself with something else, Tay felt the weight of the next steps pressing down on him. He had to be strategic. Every move needed to be careful, deliberate. The facade she had built over months couldn't hold if he acted wisely, but a misstep could destroy everything, including his credibility and his standing with friends and family. Sitting alone for a moment, Tay replayed the details in his mind, The report, the inconsistencies, her nervous cover-up. The excitement and trust he had felt when hearing about the pregnancy had shifted into suspicion and resolve. He realized this wasn't just about uncovering a lie. It was about protecting himself, his future, and the truth. And for the first time, he felt a clear plan forming. Observe, gather evidence, and confront only when the proof was undeniable. The quiet in the house felt heavier now, charged with secrets and unspoken tension. Tay knew that the confrontation wasn't over. It had just begun. And this time, he wouldn't leave anything to chance. Tay couldn't shake the report from his mind. Every time he saw Khadija laughing or telling one of her carefully rehearsed stories, the knot in his chest tightened. He knew he needed proof, something undeniable before he could act. Late one evening, when the house was quiet and Khadija was asleep, he discreetly called the clinic. Using careful words, he explained that he needed to confirm some details about a report, making sure to sound casual and unassuming. The receptionist initially hesitated, but Tay persisted politely. Soon, the details came through. The ultrasound date, the timing, the notes, they all confirmed what he had feared. The pregnancy she had announced was not new. It had started months before she claimed. His heart sank as he processed the confirmation. The realization was bitter. This wasn't a simple misunderstanding or an innocent mistake. It was deliberate. Tay knew he couldn't handle this alone. He needed advice, someone he could trust completely. He thought of Amma, his cousin and closest confidant, someone practical and level-headed. The next day, he met her at a quiet cafe. As he laid out the evidence, Amma's expression shifted from surprise to concern. She listened carefully, asking pointed questions, helping him see the situation clearly without letting emotions cloud judgment. "You have to be careful," Amma said finally. "This isn't just about Khadija. Exposing her could cause a scene with family, friends, even neighbors. You need a strategy, not just proof." Her words hit hard, but Tay knew she was right. Social pressure was real, especially in their community. People would take sides, rumors would fly, and his reputation could be at stake. He had to act wisely, not impulsively. Amma helped him outline the next steps. Keep the evidence secure, gather any additional proof quietly, and think carefully about timing before confronting Khadija. The more Tay thought about it, the heavier the stakes felt. This wasn't just a personal betrayal, it was a potential social minefield. Every move could ripple out, affecting relationships, family gatherings, and even the way friends and neighbors viewed. Yet he also felt a strange clarity. The truth was on his side now, and with the right approach, he could protect himself while exposing the deception. By the time he returned home, Tay felt a mix of resolve and caution. He placed the report and notes carefully in a secure drawer, away from Khadija's reach, and began thinking through the steps he would take next. He realized that patience and strategy were just as important as the evidence itself. For the first time, he felt the power of knowing the truth and the confidence that, when the time came, he would be ready. The quiet of the evening felt different now, charged with anticipation. Tay knew the game had changed. The facade of the perfect life was starting to crumble, and he was finally preparing to see it fall apart on his own terms. As Tay sat alone in the quiet of their home, the pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place. His mind drifted back over the months, replaying moments that he had once dismissed as trivial or innocent. The misplaced appointments, the rehearsed stories, the sudden mood swings, all of it now seemed like a carefully orchestrated pattern. He realized, with a sinking feeling, that Khadija had been manipulating him in subtle ways long before the pregnancy announcement. The memories came in sharp flashes. He remembered the conversations about money, how Khadija would hint at wanting a bigger lifestyle or drop comments about friends with wealthier spouses. She had been careful, never demanding, always framing it as casual suggestions or dreams for the future. But Tay now saw the underlying purpose: financial leverage. Every request, every conversation nudged him toward meeting her desires, without him ever realizing it. Then there were the social pressures. Khadija loved the admiration, the recognition from friends and family, and she had always positioned herself at the center of it. Tay recalled family gatherings where she subtly embarrassed him for minor oversights, making him feel responsible for upholding their perfect image. She had trained him to accommodate not just her whims but the expectations of everyone watching, binding him emotionally to her carefully curated social world. And the emotional control, he saw it most clearly in how she reacted when he questioned her or expressed doubt. Her charm, her sudden vulnerability, her tears or dramatic smiles. Each was a tool, a way to redirect attention and maintain the narrative she wanted. He remembered moments when he had felt uneasy, moments when he had wanted to speak up but instead swallowed his words. Now it was clear that those feelings were not accidents. They were part of her strategy to keep him off balance. Tay felt a mixture of anger, sadness, and disbelief. He had loved her genuinely, trusted her completely, and in return, he had been quietly manipulated. Yet, amidst the betrayal, he also felt a strange clarity. He could see the truth, the patterns, the motives. He could separate reality from illusion for the first time. But the reflection also brought an internal struggle. He wrestled with his own feelings, love versus betrayal, trust versus caution. He questioned whether he could continue their marriage, whether the person he thought he knew ever truly existed. Every memory, every interaction, now carried a shadow, a hidden meaning he had missed before. In the stillness of the evening, Tay understood that this wasn't just about Khadijah's deception. It was about reclaiming himself, seeing the truth clearly, and deciding how he would respond. He realized that the perfect life he had admired was built on manipulation, and that recognition, as painful as it was, gave him power. For the first time, he allowed himself to feel both the sting of betrayal and the resolve to act wisely. The life he had thought was perfect had a hidden agenda, and now he saw it with unflinching clarity. The weekend brought a large family gathering at Tay and Khadijah's home. Relatives from near and far had come, filling the house with laughter, chatter, and the smell of cooking. Tay moved through the crowd with careful composure, greeting cousins and aunts, shaking hands with uncles, all while keeping the envelope, the one piece of truth he needed, hidden in his pocket. He watched Khadijah glide through the room, her charm on full display, smiling at everyone and soaking in the attention. Tay waited for the right moment. He didn't want a scene, not yet, and he knew timing was everything. When the chatter reached a peak, he casually placed the report on the center of the coffee table, partially covered by a magazine, as if he had just set it down absent-mindedly. He then moved away, keeping an eye on her reactions. Khadijah noticed immediately. Her smile faltered for a brief second, just enough for Tay to see it. But she quickly recovered, adjusting her posture and continuing her conversations as if nothing had changed. It wasn't long before a cousin picked up the envelope, curious about the clinic logo. As she opened it and skimmed the papers, her eyes widened. She whispered something to her neighbor, who leaned in, reading over her shoulder. The room's atmosphere shifted almost instantly. Whispers started to ripple outward like a wave. Some voices were sharp with confusion, others low with disbelief. People looked around, seeking explanations, and a few eyes turned to Khadijah, who maintained her calm exterior, but now seemed slightly tense beneath the surface. Tay watched carefully, his heart steady despite the tension. He could feel the energy in the room change. The perfect image Khadijah had cultivated was cracking right before everyone's eyes. People began to murmur, questions forming on their lips but not yet spoken aloud. The gossip started quietly, yet it was impossible to ignore. Whispers turned into low conversations, and subtle glances darted back and forth between Khadijah and the reporter. Khadijah kept her composure, but Tay could see the flicker of panic in her eyes when she realized the truth was no longer hidden. She tried to control the narrative with practiced calm, but the weight of the evidence on the table made it impossible to spin anything convincingly. The social bubble she had relied on, her charm, the admiration of friends and family, was breaking, and Tay felt a quiet satisfaction knowing the truth was finally visible to everyone. As murmurs filled the room, Tay stayed poised. He didn't speak, didn't add fuel to the fire. He let the report and the reactions it provoked do the work. Around him, the family began piecing together what they were seeing. Shock, confusion, and realization swept through the gathering, leaving Khadijah isolated despite the crowd around her. For Tay, it was a moment of clarity. The truth was out, and now everyone could see what he had known for months. The perfect life facade had fallen, and the first real consequences were unfolding before his eyes. The room was tense, the whispers growing louder as everyone absorbed the truth on the table. Khadijah's usual confidence had vanished, replaced by a tight-lipped composure that barely concealed panic. Tay stood nearby, calm and steady, watching her carefully. He didn't need to raise his voice or make dramatic gestures. The evidence was speaking for itself. Finally, one of the relatives, an older aunt, broke the silence. "Khadijah, can you explain this?" she asked, holding up the report. The question hung in the air, direct and unavoidable. All eyes turned to Khadijah. The air felt heavy, charged with expectation. Khadijah's hands trembled slightly as she took a deep breath. It's a misunderstanding," she said, her voice shaky. "I didn't mean for anyone to be confused. I was just trying to." She stopped, realizing that no excuse could erase what was visible to everyone. Every explanation sounded hollow under the scrutiny of her family and the clear evidence in front of them. Tay remained quiet, his presence steady. He didn't interrupt, didn't yell, didn't add fuel to the confrontation. His calmness contrasted sharply with Khadijah's nervousness, and it gave him an unspoken authority. People instinctively looked to him, sensing that he was the one telling the truth without needing to shout it. As the tension unfolded, different reactions began to ripple through the room. Some relatives looked shocked and angry, whispering sharp words among themselves. Others cast sympathetic glances at Tay, recognizing the betrayal he had endured. A few aunts and cousins shook their heads slowly, a mixture of disbelief and quiet approval at the way he handled the situation. He saw nods of support from friends who had known him long enough to trust his judgment. Khadijah's attempts to recover fell flat. She tried to explain, tried to shift blame, even tried to smile and act as if it didn't matter, but the weight of the evidence and the family's awareness made her efforts futile. The facade she had built over months was crumbling, and Tay watched it happen without anger in his voice. Only a quiet, firm strength that spoke louder than any confrontation. In that moment, Tay felt a sense of clarity and control he hadn't had before. The lies were unraveling publicly, and he didn't need to force it. His composure, his patience, and his restraint made the truth undeniable. As the room settled into a charged silence, Tay realized the full impact of the moment. The betrayal had been exposed, the social mask had fallen, and now, finally, he could begin to take control of his life again. The gathering ended with murmurs and quiet conversations, but the dynamic had shifted permanently. Khadijah's influence and image were broken, while Tay's moral authority and measured strength were clear for everyone to see. The consequences were public, undeniable, and irreversible. For the first time, he felt free from the manipulation that had shadowed his life for so long. The days after the family gathering were quiet, almost eerily so. Tay spent hours alone, thinking through everything that had happened. He reflected on the years of his marriage, the small manipulations he had once ignored, and the lies that had finally come to light. He realized that trust, once broken this deeply, could not simply be repaired with apologies or explanations. After careful thought, he knew what he had to do. When Khadijah finally spoke about leaving, it was calm and measured. She seemed to understand, finally, that her attempts to control or manipulate him had failed. There was no fight, no dramatic scene, just the quiet acceptance that the life she had tried to craft through deceit was over. She packed her things and walked out the door, leaving behind the home, the memories, and the illusions of perfection she had built around herself. In the weeks that followed, Tay focused on rebuilding. He reached out to friends and family, reconnecting in ways he had neglected while caught up in maintaining appearances. He listened more, shared honestly, and set clear boundaries where needed. Every conversation, every gesture, felt like a step toward reclaiming his life and his sense of self. He realized that vigilance and awareness were not signs of distrust. They were tools to protect himself and those he cared about. Sitting alone one evening, Tay looked around his home, now quiet but peaceful. He felt a weight lift off his shoulders, a clarity he hadn't known in years. The betrayal had been painful, but it had also given him strength. He smiled softly, thinking back on the envelope that had started it all. The truth was waiting on the table all along, and it set me free.